Hi everyone, welcome back to the Property Finance Podcast, and today I'm joined by Adam Powell again to continue our series of frequently asked questions. So, how to do your due diligence for development projects. So what are the lenders looking for? What do you need to show? Essentially, how do you go about doing your homework when it comes to a development project?
I think it boils down to mostly it's down to the developer, the client, making sure that they do their due diligence, so that there's no nasty surprises, that once it goes into the lender for them to do all their reports, etc., that there's no nasty surprises when the reports come back. But there's the added layer of if you're doing your due diligence as a developer at the front end, making sure that all the figures are correct, because unless you do that, you don't know whether the deal's profitable or not.
And how do you, just touching on that very briefly then, so there's essentially three figures that we're interested in, which is the purchase price, the build cost, and the GDV. So on each of those, what can a developer do to get further certainty?
I think the first thing is that they're obviously looking to negotiate a purchase price with the vendor.
Yeah.
Then they'll do, especially with the experienced developers, they'll do let's say a development appraisal. So they'll look at build costs, what the professional fees are going to be like, what the potential financial costs are going to be as well.
Yeah.
And the selling costs, potentially marketing costs, all of those have got to be factored in. Because once they've done that, they can then look at the sort of the GDV, what the end value is going to be for these units that they're going to be building or converting.
And what would you say, touch on the GDV. So would you suggest they go to 2 or 3 estate agents, get some comparables?
Yeah, and the again, with some of the less experienced developers, it's when they go and get their comparables, it's, comparables are basically not what's on the market at the moment, but what's actually been sold.
Yeah. And Rightmove is very misleading in that sense, because a lot of people will just log into Rightmove and they will see, oh, okay, there's XYZ on the same street or within a quarter of a mile or 1/10 of a mile, whatever. I'm going to go against those things. But like you said, it's based on what has actually sold.
What has actually sold in the last 3 to 6 months to give them a realistic indication of what the GDV is.
Because that's what valuers use at the end of the day.
Well, exactly. That's exactly the how they value the sort of those properties. So once they've got that, they've worked out the cost of the development, and again they need to include things like a 10% contingency on the build costs. There may be a Section 106 or a SIL that needs to be incorporated in the figures, because those need to be covered. Yeah,
and with that build cost, would you suggest to a client that they go and get their own QS, or would you say it's not really required? Or because there's got to be that period as well where they actually go out to contractors and get quotes, etc. And for a first-time developer, that can be quite daunting, and also naivety, I guess, of a contractor comes back with a figure, you go, oh, okay, yeah, that must be the figure. But actually, would you suggest they go to a QS who actually does that process for them?
I for first time, or those with limited experience, I would encourage them to go with a QS, only because purely for that reason. They don't have the wool pull over their eyes, and
contractors can do that. I mean, this is using a very blanket approach to contractors, but there is that within the building industry, that there are some builders, some contractors that will take advantage of a first-time developer, and having that person in between doing that process for you.
There are some excellent contractors out there, but it's always best, especially in if you've got limited experience, to get a QS to really go in there, and because sometimes they can question what's going on there. So for the sort of the larger type projects, definitely I would get a QS involved just to sense check it, because when you start that process with the application, you're going to have to pay for a valuation, you're going to have to pay for the lender's QS to produce their reports, and that can go into the many thousands.
And actually, that, I think a lot of people would look at that and say, well, why am I employing 2 QSs? But actually, I think on the larger scale things, it's worth having your own QS, because actually they can then liaise on your behalf with the lender's QS. And I think that adds a layer of, they know what they're doing.
Yeah, the lender's QS is purely that. It's their QS, it's their report into, they produce the initial report, and then they'll monitor it as well whilst the build is going on. But so the key thing is making sure that you can get as close to the sort of correct figures as you can.
Yeah.
And from there, once you've got those figures, you can work out what your profit is going to be. And you really need to aim for around about 20% profit.
Yeah. And it's always a bit weird sort of going, well, what's the minimum I can get away with? Because actually you're always trying to maximize it. But in terms of the minimum that we can kind of get lending for is probably around the 15% of GDV mark, I would say. And we have had a couple that have been a bit lower, but they've been for very experienced developers and probably developers who are looking to retain the units at the back end as well.
And lenders have recently sort of tweaked onto the fact that actually it's not all about profitability, it's about income as well.
Yeah.
The whatever the strategy is, but they still want to make sure that there's sufficient profit in there because if there isn't, if anything goes wrong,
they're the ones who've got to take it over.
Exactly, they're
and
really
get out of
concerned
it.
that the client's just going to walk away from it. So once they've got those figures and they've worked out what the profit is going to be, and let's say those figures just don't work, there's hardly any profit in it.
That's where you start to negotiate that purchase price.
You have to, I mean, because that's the only thing that's going to be able to move at that particular point. If all the other figures are correct, have been checked and they seem to be correct.
Yeah.
The only other thing is that the fact that the vendor's asking, or the salesperson, the sales guys that are selling the property to you, whether it's the site or a building, it's they're asking too much.
Yeah.
And I know that we've done some events where this came up a lot, where it's about trying to renegotiate with a vendor over the value of the site and the purchase price, and they're not willing to budge. And it was, and there's stacking the odds in your favour. And I think the only way you're really going to be able to help in the negotiation process is show them your figures. Say, well, look, this is how much it's going to cost.
Yeah.
This is the end value of the units, and this is how much profit I'll be making, which is next to nothing, if anything. These figures have been checked out. The only thing that we can really negotiate on is the purchase price. And then either the vendor actually agrees to renegotiate, or ultimately look for your next.
It's going to sit on the market, and
it's going to sit on the market, and that does happen, unfortunately. But because you've done that due diligence, you'll know that you're not that the deal will work or it won't work.
Yeah.
And if they're not willing to renegotiate on the purchase price, walk away. You're going to have to ultimately make a decision, walk away, move onto a next project. And yes, you have done a lot of work up front, and it may not work, but that's the whole point.
Yeah, and it's also key to kind of mention about not getting emotionally attached to a deal as well, because I think we've seen that a lot. But it's
especially when they've done a lot of work as well into it, you do get emotionally attached, and I get it. But you've really got to focus on ultimately why you're doing it. It's for profit. So if those figures don't work, and the vendor isn't willing to negotiate, even after you've explained it, otherwise, unless you don't sort of sit down and stack the odds in favor by explaining why you think the purchase price should be X and not Y, he'll just think you're just chancing your arm.
So you show them a set of figures, essentially say the build is this, GDV is this, the purchase has got to be this, and having that spreadsheet in front of you to say, here are the figures. Yeah. Not giving too much away to them, obviously, because you don't want to give them the realization that actually they can go and do this for themselves, but giving them enough evidence to say, this is why this figure's got to be
you're not coming across as if you're just trying to chance your arm. You've actually done some work here, and this is why you think it is going to have to be X purchase price and not Y, because the figures just don't work. And if you show them that, it'll start the cogs moving a little bit.
Absolutely.
It won't work out every time, because sometimes you've got vendors that are quite happy to sit on a site for.
Well, a lot of them become disillusioned, don't they? Because they're given a figure by an estate agent, or they've got a figure in their head from a previous discussion, and they become disillusioned that actually these figures don't work anymore, or they've maybe not seen that build costs have gone up, or they've not seen that GDVs naturally are going to come down as interest rates and things go up, and X, Y, Z. There's all these different factors that affect that initial value, and they just hear a figure from an estate agent and think, just go with that figure.
Yeah, and everybody knows that material costs have gone up.
Yeah.
Over the years, interest rates have gone up, finance costs therefore have gone up, and that erodes the amount of profitability you can make out of a deal. So yeah, as I said, sitting down with the vendor and explaining why you have to renegotiate, again, should help in your negotiations. It doesn't always work though.
No.
But at least you're going in armed,
Yeah.
and ready to explain why. But as I said, if he's not willing to budge, why would you purchase it? If you're going to lose money on it or hardly any profit, just walk away.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. To everyone watching and listening, thank you very much. Catch you on the next one.